Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar covering how to overcome the top 6 asset management challenges in K through 12. My name is Michael Wilson, National Account Manager for Hayes Software Systems. As I go through the presentation today, please submit any questions you have in the chat window and we'll circle back around to them at the end of the webinar. Also, remember when we talk about an asset today, we're talking about non-capital assets. Things like mobile devices, teacher computers, student devices, classroom equipment, things like projectors, document cameras, displays, infrastructure, routers, switchers, server racks, things like that. So the items that are going to fall below the capital threshold, whatever that might be at your district. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So the internet is the greatest learning tool in the history of mankind, and we're just at the beginning of what we can do with that platform. Student laptops or tablet devices are being purchased by the thousands, along with a lot of hardware for 21st century classrooms. But you can't use the same asset management policy and procedures of the past. Districts who implement a state-of-the-art asset management plan will see gains in maximizing the existing resources the district already owns, whether they are actively used or stored away. Minimizing the cost of replacing lost assets to see an increase in the transparency of asset data to any asset stakeholder and improve accountability. Accurately forecasting for future purchases by analyzing reliable asset data. Responding to internal, state, and federal audits with reliable data with less reactive staff effort. Ensuring students have access to the materials they need to succeed in the classroom, which is aligned strategically to your district mission. As we know, the goal is always for student education. Everything's focused on that. Our partnership with districts across the country has led us to identify the trends presented here on this slide. School districts of all sizes are faced with new internal and external pressures which challenge their ability to do business as usual. Managing all these new types of assets for inventory can't be done the way capitalized assets are inventoried. Access to asset information is different, and the resources required to scale for the volume of assets is unmanageable. We'll spend a few minutes discussing each of these challenges next. So asset management challenge number 1 is physical inventory audits. So this is focused on verifying what assets the district has across its buildings. Many districts are faced with a very manual process of reconciling their asset records, and because of that, it only happens once a year. Only a very small percentage of fixed asset systems provide functionality to support the district in performing a physical inventory audit of all the property that needs to be tracked. Often paper and spreadsheets are employed, hours and hours of staff time across school buildings and departments are used, and the frustration level of the process can lead to inaccurate data. Improving this process means taking advantage of opportunities to quickly gather the correct data and change the perception of inventory records. By perception, I'm specifically talking about schools and departments who are repeatedly faced with inventory that doesn't get updated throughout the school year or from the last inventory audit. District staff responsible for trying to keep up with the constant flow of asset transfer, surplus forms, and audit adjustments could completely change their daily priorities if the inventory changes I just described were automated and electronic, updating on a real-time basis. Here's an example of an audit summary and acceptance report pulled from our software. The system gives users the ability to push audits to buildings or rooms across the district, and you can watch the auditing process happen in real time. As you can see, this would be helpful when working to solve challenge number 1. So on asset management number 2, we're going to talk about the low dollar value equipment. So kind of touched on this at the beginning of the presentation, but the assets that are falling below that capital threshold, sometimes that's $5,000 of the district, sometimes $1,000 of the district. It's going to vary depending on each district, whether it's state mandated or pushed out by a superintendent. So lower purchase value assets become more overwhelming as computing devices become less expensive and instruction focuses on more engaging tactics. Finance departments don't have the staff or the system resources to scale to meet these demands. They also are not the end user of records they are collecting. A great example is a capability to see an inventory list of all Apple iPads in the district. It seems like a basic request, but if the people who create asset records aren't the people who actually use the records, there will always be gaps in effectiveness. They won't know that what you actually need to see is that data with detailed model numbers, funding source information, purchase date, and assigned location, whether that's a building room, or an individual in the district. Connecting your information consumers and your data entry staff together to limit unnecessary work and focus efforts on the highest priorities. Let's take a look at what inventory looks like in one school district. So I have an example here of a school district with 85,000 students and 128 school buildings. This district's fixed asset system data gives us a look into the inventory that has made its way into that fixed asset system. Of the 162,000 assets in the fixed asset system, only 3% of its inventory is greater than $5,000, which is now the district's newly adopted capital asset threshold. That leaves 97% of inventory that is critical to instruction and administrative operations accounted for in a fixed asset system that doesn't give controlled access to staff to truly manage that inventory on a daily basis. Now also keep in mind that this does not include low dollar value assets like tablets, e-readers, iPads that school departments are expected to track on their own unless they were purchased with federal funds. The district recognized that oversight and in response to this challenge made a policy change that offered processes to better suit these low dollar value assets. They removed them from their fixed asset system and added them to a more flexible inventory repository system intended to be accessed by anyone with the authority to move, dispose, assign, and purchase inventory. So that's a great segue into our next challenge, so multiple inventory systems. As a result of limited user access and software functionality in a district's fixed asset system, there's an overwhelming amount of disparate data manually tracked at multiple departments and staff levels. Anyone managing these siloed inventory repositories is faced with process inefficiencies and data inconsistency. Accounting for these assets on a daily basis is critical to end users of inventory, but it takes communication to create a documented, teachable, and measurable, consistent inventory program across your district. So when you think about solving challenge number 3, consider a report like this showing you a list of inventory across the district. This report can be broken down by many of the fields captured in the asset description. You can even save searches that are needed on a regular basis. Challenge number 4 affects both the district and school administrators responsible for evaluating needs and creating a budget. Without a formal process for communicating purchases and asset movement, decision makers can be in the dark trying to plan for the future. It's also possible that equity may be an issue in your district, and without access to identifying not only the types and ages of assets across school buildings, but also the funding source of those assets. As an example, Title I qualified schools have to be treated uniquely. Inventory can only be relocated to another Title I school, and if a school status were to be removed, an inventory funded by Title I would need to be that Title I inventory would need to be identified and removed so that school is now in compliance. Solving this challenge also includes creating a vision and an in-depth understanding of the inventory program purpose, which will ultimately maximize what has been spent for assets and maximize losses and unnecessary spending. So we find that districts overspend on new equipment because they don't always have access to what inventory each school site has. Some people I've spoken to call it a hoarding mentality. When you are working through planning and budgeting, you can save time and money by transferring assets between school sites. There is a surplus. So in asset management challenge number 5, talking about something that's extremely important to school districts in this day and age, which is one-to-one device logistics. Implementing new learning initiatives and assessment requirements are causing districts to evaluate what processes aren't going to be efficient, accurate, or scalable for these types of assets. All too often, the district will decide to invest funds in the purchase of assets without a plan for how to deploy them, recoup them, and identify them in the future. Many schools are left on their own with little district support to manage the logistics required to assign assets to student and staff. Unlike other automated tool options, a specialized inventory repository built with capabilities for personal assignment will include an integration with your student management system, so the new students are added and transferred to schools nightly. It would also include an integration option for your HR system to populate teachers, support staff, and administrators who also receive costly inventory. So it's important to set your terms and conditions when issuing a device to students or staff. You can also cut down on paper forms by using digital signature capture. With student information integration, it will save a PDF copy into the student or staff file. So here's an example of all the details you can store on an individual asset when using an advanced inventory management software. Track assets through to their end of life and easily change the status of the asset as it moves around the district. There are also customizable fields in a system like this. So as you look at this specific device, there is information based off of the computer, but if it was a different asset, say a projector, this information could be lamp life or the last time a filter was cleaned. You could also add warranty information up here, whatever information would be important to the technology department at your specific district. So the last challenge we'll mention today focuses on the day-to-day oversight of assets. Lots of different staff have their hands on inventory. Without giving a principal or department head real-time access to assets under their responsibility, little can be done to ensure equity between teachers and schools. Coupled with other challenges we've mentioned, not effectively capturing inventory data can mean schools receive requests from multiple areas of the district to gather data at a moment's notice. Like, how many computers have Windows 7, or does your school have any document cameras in storage another school could use? Purchases get made unnecessarily. Staff is unaware of assets being purchased by others in the district. Warranties go unused, true needs go unrecognized, and students miss out on equitable opportunities for access. Centralizing inventory records offers the ability to improve capacity, capability, consistency, and quality. So before we finish up today, let's cover a few tactics you can use to improve processes and create efficiencies in your district. The first recognizes that many people play a role in the end-to-end management of assets in your district. In order to be open, responsive, and accountable, management committees need to actively engage with your district stakeholders. Entering into dialogue with stakeholders can bring a number of benefits to the management committee and the organization. It ensures the district continues to meet their needs and addresses any concerns. It keeps program managers in touch with changing environments and requirements, and it increases their engagement with and support for the district's goals. It's never too soon to formulate the "what's in it for me" question, as you'll quickly be required to articulate why the change is necessary and what the value is at a variety of levels. This is a core concept to move change forward within the district. While certain personnel may have a clear picture of why something needs to change, persons in different departments, campuses, or at varying levels within the district have different pains and a different view on what is most beneficial for them and their role. Now that you've got a great communication plan down, it's time to think about how you'll evaluate progress to reaching your goals. You'll want to create a set of metrics which will serve as strategic performance indicators designed to assist the district in monitoring and managing the execution of your new process. These performance indicators will be measures that may address loss ratios, buying habits, storage versus active ratios, or inventory audit procedures. Lastly, take it upon yourself to challenge old policies and behaviors. We are creatures of habit, and we like repeatable processes. We don't want to have to think about what to do all the time. Your asset inventory practices are not immune to those realities of human nature. Dig in and ask every three-year-old child's favorite question, why? I guarantee you will be surprised at how often the answer to the question of why do we do a process like this way is contributing to the challenges facing your district. Often the source of policy, whether written or unwritten, is long forgotten. Schedule time at least twice a year to evaluate your current climate, discuss your initiatives, challenges, and resources. So thank you all so much for your time today, and I hope I was able to provide some new tactics and strategies you can use, or just kind of maybe lit up that light bulb of some of these challenges, and maybe made you think about how are these being handled at our district, and how can we make a change there to save time and money, or whatever the result might be of fixing that specific challenge. So my contact information is here on the screen for anybody that may drop off right away, but we'll take a look at the chat window and see what kind of questions that we have and answer them best as possible.